Of all the potential ways that the last Airbender design team could have handled bending, I'm glad that they went with the interesting one. I know that I certainly would have pitched relatively early on in design bending as a enters the battlefield / attacks based trigger, because while it's shown in the show to have many and varied uses, the reason it exists in the property is for the action scenes. It exists to be fun and dynamic, cool shooting elements around action scenes, and that's the element of bending that translates best to Magic, being itself a combat-based game. The alternate and much more difficult design solution is to make all 4 forms of bending completely distinct from each other, in a way that is of course undercut by them sharing the last 2/3 of their name. But I am delighted to say that the design team has mostly knocked it out of the park. First of all, Earthbending. 10 out of 10, no notes, absolutely perfect. Animates lands, gives the lands haste, returns the lands to the battlefield when they've been removed through conventional creature-based removal means. All future land animation should be taking notes from Earthbending. Just straight up. If it's allowed, Earthbending should become an evergreen term for animating a land. I am personally extremely excited for Rampant Growth with Set Mechanic and Bite Spell with Set Mechanic. Now, traveling around the circle, we have Waterbending, which I have thoughts about. I'll be upfront, I like it a lot. I don't know that I would have thought of Convoke as Waterbending, but the more that I think about it, the more I'm like, oh, that's really, really nice. Lots of creatures coming together, lots of different flexible ways to use it. The fact that it's only on activated abilities instead of also on spells when we have Earthbending on spells, and so it's going to be frustrating that I can't have Freeze Enchantment with Waterbend, but like, that's a minor quibble compared to the fact that I can tap artifacts for some reason. Yes, the famously nature-based archetype allows me to tap artifacts, I guess because it's centered in blue. This is incredibly strange to me, but if it is meant to invoke the idea of me sucking the water out of my food tokens or just straight up using blood tokens to pay for abilities, then I guess in that context it's hilarious, and I should build a blood-based waterbending deck. Now, airbending took a while to grow on me. Like, I'm glad I spent the extra day to sit down and compile my thoughts before I made this video, because airbending as a force of pacifism is going to have a very sort of limited scope of ways to be incorporated into the game. But I do appreciate the fact that repeatedly airbending your opponent's creatures without haste, obviously, is actually a pretty oppressive prison effect, and those who have seen later Avatar adaptations know what I'm talking about when I say oppressive airbending prison effects. But also, constantly flipping my creatures off the board and recasting them is a lot of fun, given the fact that airbending doesn't restrict you to recasting them on a future turn. We are going to see some infinite loops with this shenanigan. Okay, I saved it to last because it's the most disappointing. Firebending is an attacks trigger that adds red mana and does nothing else. And it's wild to me that you would print this as an ability in Modern Magic, which is so deeply steeped in, if we're going to make a card that generates a thing, we're going to give it a way to use the thing it generates on itself. And we have, in our first look, a card that generates soldier tokens that make mana when attacking, and the only thing that they can use that mana on, because they have to use it during combat, it doesn't make it to main phase 2, is the 9 mana flashback cost for this spell. Just give these firebending soldiers fire breathing. Make them 2/2s with firebending 1, and red, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It should be noted that we did get to see Firelord Sozin, who generates red mana with his firebending ability and then uses it for something, which is generally how we would expect cards to be designed in the modern age. But on the other hand, we have Firelord Zuko, who generates not just some red mana, but lots of red mana, and has no way to use it himself. He even has, whenever you cast a spell from exile, and no way to put things in exile himself. Now, what firebending could have been alternatively is a bit of a harder question. Personally, I'm all for firebending being the one bending that is specifically inextricably tied to combat. But this implementation is not it. And I would be on the stand defending firebending as it exists if the cards that were being previewed with it indicated that every firebending card was going to have something that it could do with the mana. But we have 4 firebending cards, and one of them comes with an inherent way to use the mana. Because no, I'm not counting Fire Nation attacks, because if I spend 5 mana on 2 creatures, and then they add 2 more mana, and then I play another land for the next turn, that only gets me to 8, and I can't then use the mana from these Fire Nation soldiers to play Fire Nation attacks again. Just have the flashback cost be 8, and then I would give you at least half points. This is straight up a failing grade on incredibly basic stuff. And it upsets me so much that I have to just take a moment and remember Earthbending is peak, and I love it.